Hello everyone, it's Graham Cofe with another My Music, sponsored by the wonderful Analog Trash. In a minute I'm going to be speaking to Lucy here, who's got a lovely guitar on the wall, and I need to ask her all about that. But first, this. Thank you to the wonderful Analog Trash. Do check out their website. Lucy Kruger, how are you today?
I am well, thank you. How are you?
I'm actually very well today, although a little cold because it's continuing to be just too cold in England. Where are you coming from?
I'm in Berlin and it's pretty damn cold too.
Is it?
It's been snowing a lot the last couple of days and it's very snowy outside. I haven't ventured forth yet, but I can see from my safe little window here.
Yeah. Why? Can I ask why you're there? Is that where you're based now, or is?
Yeah.
Is that an inspiration in itself? It's a place I've always wanted to go to. My son managed to get there about a year and a half ago on his film degree.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. I don't have a lot of relative experience. South Africa is very different to Berlin, and I think living very far from home comes with a lot of its own. Maybe inspiration is one word, but I guess ways into thinking is another way of thinking about it. Like you move very differently, you get around very differently. People speak a different language. There's a lot of strange stimulation, and when I say strange, I mean.
Well, do you feel like a little bit of an alien sometimes? Not in a nasty way, but
yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that must trigger a thought process of, I'm sure that whenever someone moves away from their home to somewhere that's a completely different culture. I mean, even when I moved from Bedford, where I grew up, to university up in the northeast of England.
Yeah,
which isn't, a massive move by any accounts, but it was so completely different culturally from where I'd grown up in a small village to moving into a big city that was, full of a life that was very, very different from home. It kind of that I found that quite stimulating in terms of my response to that. Yeah. So do you tend to find that your response to where you are now, and kind of, I suppose, thinking back to where you've come from, that stimulates how you write or what you write about?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I first moved here, I think the stuff I was writing about was like very overtly about being a stranger. I think it's less overt now, but I think because I write extremely autobiographically, whether I think that's admirable or not, that is what happens. My environment is extremely impactful on the process. I mean, I think it is for anyone, anywhere, at any time, which is obviously quite a boring thing to say and quite an obvious thing to say, but is really true. And when you're in a place that has a particularly strong, has very strong sensory offerings, then it definitely infiltrates.
Have you toured the studios there? Have you sort of gone and sort of gone, well, this is where Bowie did this, or I mean, the opportunities there in Berlin?
The opportunities are there. I would say the budget is missing. Not so much. I think what I have been trying to do actually is to be less and less dependent on studios, because obviously it's great to be, there's a lot of great spaces here and great people to work with. But I've been finding that in terms of my own process, money is always a tricky thing. It costs a lot of money to make things, and it's not an art form that necessarily generates a lot of income. And so over the last few years, I've been trying to learn a bit more about recording and even mixing, and just trying to actually keep it more and more insular. I mean, I have seen some really lovely studios. But yeah, like I say, I think
is part of that for you, because you're quite a visual artist as well, is quite part of the necessity to kind of pull it in house, as you say, in terms of the money, that you want to do a full job as well.
Yeah, I guess some of it's got to do with I would I think it's such a lovely thought to think about working in another studio with other people for a long period of time.
Yeah.
But what often ends up happening is that if you want to work with those people who are very, very good, and in those studios that are big and beautiful, you'll spend your whole budget on a day in that studio, and I don't know if I can do what I need to do in a day. I would rather do it a bit clumsily on my own and take a long time and make sure that I'm happy with it. And maybe that changes, maybe at some point I feel more confident in what I'm doing, and I feel like, okay, this is made and I can go into the studio now and do 2 days and get what I need or what I want. But it feels a bit unwise at this point. It doesn't feel like, considering everything that's possible and everything that is, it doesn't feel like the most meaningful way to work at the moment.
You say clumsy, but are you clumsy, or are you careful? I mean, are you quite particular in terms of the way that you write and produce?
No, actually, I would say I think clumsy and careful can go together, in the sense that, like, you can be careful with how you shape the final thing, but the process can still be quite clumsy. And I don't know so much about, especially this new record that's coming out. A lot of it was done in the computer, and like with me and the computer, and we have a very immature relationship, and so I'm figuring out as I'm going, and I don't have a grand vision. I have a feeling that I want, but I don't have like a grand vision that I then have the necessary tools and the knowledge to shape that out. I'm like, oh, I have a vague feeling and I kind of know how this works, and then I push some buttons, and then I obviously listen, and I can hear what I like and what I don't like, but clumsy in that way, I think. And you're allowed to be when you're working by yourself.
What are you the most fussy about when you're producing your music? What is it? Vocals, or is it the instrumentation behind it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess there is quite a lot of focus on the vocals for me, because that to me is where the message is most clearly articulated. Because I guess I think I focus quite a lot on lyrics and voice, and also it's what I listen to, and I think what a lot of humans listen to, because it's an instrument that we're all very intimate with, and so we have a lot of nuance when it comes to voice, and it's been a really tricky process for me. This new album is the closest that I've got to where I want to be in terms of vocal performance and in terms of mixing, but I still am not there yet.
No.
Or maybe vocals. Yeah.
I sensed that, and the reason I sensed that was because you're the kind of artist that's right up my street in terms of listening to, because I've always loved a female voice anyway, but I also always love a female voice that's really willing to kind of challenge the stereotype of the female voice as well. And I think that you do that, if I listen to Burning Building, you've got two voices there, which are quite distinct from each other.
Right.
Yeah. You've got a higher voice, and then you've got a voice which is determined, shall we say, that's trying to cap through. You look at Stereoscope as a song. I mean, the first sounds of the first vocals of that are a sound, really, rather than a vocal line. Yeah. So I feel that you're actually trying to make a statement with the texture of the voice and the production of the voice as well. So you would say you're pretty conscious of that when you.
Yeah, no, sure. And actually, this album was also interesting in that I think the 3 records that I made before this, I literally speak quite often about wanting to kind of make a noise and use my voice, but I was singing about it, and I think I'm slowly like having the courage to actually start doing it. Yeah, because it's so interesting to think about the female voice in terms of the history of it and the perception of it and the way it's used and the way it's understood, and when it gets uncomfortable for people, and it's such a beautiful thing in the sense of like all you have to do in order to transgress or push is to play, and there's so much in that, which sounds so obvious, but it's not necessarily so frequently done.
You say you're becoming more confident in your own voice?
Well, no, I'm more confident in exploring what it can
do,
or how much there is in it. That because it's like it is your voice is autobiography. It is you. It's not like and much more than any other. If you paint something, it's also autobiography, and you'll have a particular style no matter what kind of training you do, because it's your hands and your vision and but you still have a piece of material between you and the your body, and same even with an instrument. It's your hands and you're doing it, but there's something blocking the pathway. Your voice is one of the few things where, and I guess something like dance, but your voice is directly there. It is you, and so yeah,
it's also the thing that makes the most contact with the listener as well, in a way, in the most personal way. I don't know whether you've ever read Tracy Fawn's book about singing, but if you haven't, it's well worth a read. Yeah, okay. Because I think she describes really well why we're so fascinated with the singer or the voice within music, because it's something we can all do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a very recognizable form of communication, and so we all have a lot of history and context and relationship to it. Yeah.
So we can all kind of imagine ourselves in that space.
Yeah, sure.
Even if we opened our mouths and terrible things came out, we can still all sing. It's not everyone that can, despite what Radiohead said, it's not everyone that can play guitar,
right?
Or be proficient on an instrument, but we can all sing. So I think it's that kind of pulls us in there. Yeah. Where did music writing start for you? Were you young when you first started writing?
Yeah, I mean quite young. I think I was 16, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately, because I've been trying to think about what the most meaningful part of this thing is, and what it is that I want to do, or what I wanted to do. And when I was young, very young, I just really loved to sing, and I loved to perform. And I didn't really think about it as a way into creating. But when I was 16, my brother's girlfriend at the time, who's now his wife, she started learning to play guitar, and we were away for a weekend, and she played a Joni Mitchell cover, and she played one of her own songs, and it had such an incredible impact on me to see somebody playing somebody else's song. And I didn't know Joni Mitchell at that point, and so obviously that was a huge opening for me. But then also to see her performing her own song, and to witness this person who I had witnessed in other scenarios, but I hadn't seen in that way, was so moving. And
Could you see her getting lost in the music? Is
Well,
that part of it?
yeah, I guess so. I guess and I was let in, you know. It was like it's a very beautiful way to share, and also music is one of those things where, yeah, especially in a culture like, when I say ours, I don't know what I mean. Obviously, that's a very broad thing to say, but what I mean is, like, at least my experience of my cultural surroundings, finding ways to share generously or intimately are few and far between. You know, environments are very controlled, and it is controlled in a way, but for some reason, it is this kind of one place where it's okay to express. It feels kind of okay, and I don't know. I felt that very moving, and so I started to learn to play guitar, and I started to write. Then, yeah.
When did you move on from guitar? When did the electrics come in, if you like? When did the electronic beeps and blocks come in?
Only actually about 2 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago, during lockdown. I decided I was like limiting myself a lot in terms of play. I was depending a lot on other musicians to create, and I felt like I wanted to find a new way to say things because I was quite stuck in a particular kind of vulnerability. I'm saying all this now, it sounds like I had a very clear vision. In hindsight, this is what was happening, I think, you know. So I decided to kind of set a project for myself. I was going to make an album and really not try and worry about, because something happens when you're trying to learn something new. You can often tell this is not very good, but you can't stop. You have to keep going, you know, if you're going to get somewhere decent. And so really just giving myself permission to
fail.
Use yes, and exactly, like, please fail, you know, like an invitation to fail, and just use anything on Logic, any kind of the you know, the recording software, any kind of synth, or however many voices in my head were going like, oh, there's probably no integrity in this, like, this is all digital sounds and everyone's going to see through, to just kind of dispel those voices and it was so fun and so interesting and exciting that I've kind of just stayed with it.
Yeah, quite liberating in a way.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. Did you learn some little tricks along the way and you thought, well, that's my way of doing this, and actually I really like that?
Yeah, I think I did. I mean, what I have to watch is not to stay on those things, you know. It's interesting.
Yeah, and then move on.
Yeah.
It sounds like this is very similar conversation to I had with Lapsley. You know, where she said to me, you know, that her kind of initial thing when she started putting out music was this kind of voice change thing that she did, where she would use computers to lower her voice, so she'd have a female and a male.
Right.
Yeah, but it's all her.
Yeah.
Now she's becoming more comfortable. I guess if you listen to her latest album, she's becoming more comfortable with just her voice, her natural voice.
Yeah.
But I think it's nice in a way that you kind of need at any time with music to kind of latch onto the things that you find work for you at that point, and then almost you rail against them, you know?
Yeah, totally. I also think it's not dangerous, that's dramatic. It's also probably not, like, changing too frequently also doesn't allow you to go to the depths of something, or kind of, you know.
Yeah, you want to explore something almost to the limit of that thing.
Yeah. So that's also a tricky thing, you know, because sometimes change can also just be an excuse not to stay in the hard part of something, or, you know. Yeah, I think I'm sometimes wonder about that, like how. It's kind of easier to come to the new exciting thing when it's also a bit scary because you don't know if it's any good or not, but it feels very exciting. And then there's like the hard work of crafting, which I think is a harder place for me to stay.
Of course, when you've got an electronic sound like you've got quite a powerful sound there, and you've also got, in a way, an artificial sound. Yeah, I mean, you use computers and whatever, you're going to have a bit of a. But does that does that allow you to develop a character behind the music at all? And you know it's autobiographical, as you say, but does it allow you to be a bigger expression of yourself when?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to hear you say that, because about the electronic thing, because I mean the last 3 records I made were recorded completely live in a room. So this is quite new territory for me, and it gives me quite a joy to hear you explain the music like that, because yeah, it's quite new to me. And yes, I think that there's a lot of room for developing a character inside of that play, because I don't necessarily think, it's also something that I've been thinking about a lot, but the way to meaningful vulnerability is not necessarily through the performance of your character, or through you exploring in a kind of pure way your sound or your character, but actually like playing a little bit and playing with your persona, and as sometimes a kind of more meaningful way into something true. And when I say true, I know this language is all a bit but there can be a lot of sincerity, or you can touch on something very true or meaningful, or something that translates through play more than you can sometimes by trying to bear yourself as you are, you know.
Well, it's more, you're right. Yeah, you're right. It's more childlike in a way.
Yeah,
it's what
yeah,
we do. What we do as children.
Yeah,
is we play, and we pretend to be this, and we pretend to be that, and we say, oh, I'm a knight, or I'm a princess, or I've got 5 children, and you watch them, and they all, the youngest is 7, and he's always pretending to be something else. There's nothing, as you say, that's not impure. That's not him not being him. It's part of him being bolder in that moment and being able to actually say more, because he's inhabiting a comfort. He's inhabiting something else which enables him to be bigger about what he is that for that minute. And I think that's great.
Yeah, and I think it's especially interesting for adults, and I guess for me in particular, to try and access that is in a way a much more vulnerable thing to do, because I don't know, it says something like, I don't know why it feels so vulnerable or why it is so vulnerable, but it's like,
well, partly I think it's the rhetoric of society these days. I mean, everybody's talking about being authentic and telling your own
authenticity, the language around it, and I understand it, but it somehow assumes that we know things about ourselves
that we don't.
Really, like, obviously we do, but we also really don't. And so there's a vulnerability in play in that you are not pretending to understand what's coming out necessarily. Like, you're just accessing what is there, and then you display it. Obviously, there's a responsibility in curating what you then present finally to the audience. But yeah,
but also it's part and parcel of art. Do you have to ask the question, do you always want your artist to be a complete representation of themselves, or do you want them to be something that little bit bigger? Because actually I think you do, in a way. I think you want artists to challenge our own perception of things and make us think about things that we would never have thought about because of that play. I think that's important. I think that's one of the reasons why people were so upset in a way when Bowie died, was because he was an artist that was always showing us in a different way. He was always turning the mirror on society and people and showing us that perhaps we didn't exist in in the way that we thought, or society didn't run the way that we thought. So that's good. That's good, because that moves society on as well, I think.
Yeah.
You could be that. You could be.
It's very, very good storytelling is what we want as well, and that can mean a lot of different things. But yeah, that's what it is in the end.
Yeah, we definitely want that.
Yeah.
So what sort of topics, so people understand, what sort of topics are you covering on the album?
Oh my gosh. If I'm honest, I think I think it's mostly about oh gosh. Sorry, I think I would have prepared some kind of. It's hard for me to say, because in a way, even though I'm talking now about good storytelling, a lot of it was quite impulsive, and the idea is still, for me, the most important thing to try and do is to play. A lot of this is about a reckoning with death, even though it's not about an experience that I had with death recently, but it's some kind of coming to grips with mortality and physicality of now. And
was there a trigger for that?
No, my life. It's a question that I've been asking for a while, and I'm just asking it in a more trying to ask it in a more present, guttural, visceral, physical way, and be in relationship with the form of, my own body, my lover's body, the space that I'm in. Something about a kind of urgency around connection, I guess. With yourself and with the person in front of you, and with trying to find deep guttural love in a society, in a time where that is quite, for a number of reasons, quite a challenging thing to do.
I was going to say, do you feel any of that has come out of the fact that we've just lived through one of the weirdest periods in history? We've all been challenged by our own mortality, haven't we, in the last years?
No, sure. I think that definitely has. And something to do with, and I know this is going to sound so trite, and I don't, but it's trying to find the time and the headspace to experience deep love and touch in a time of hardcore capitalism. So fighting to stay in the body and with another. And yes, I'm sure that it's been exacerbated by, those are questions that I had already, but then when you experience it in such a hardcore and communal way, then I guess, it pushes those things, or
In terms of your own listening to music, you mentioned Joni Mitchell earlier, but is there anybody along the way that has been an inspiration, just in terms of the way that they've opened up music to you?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I have very clear people that I listen to a lot and have been for the last while, and it's been well, I was listening to the Jenny Fell albums a lot. She's a Norwegian artist, and Aldous Harding, A Big Thief for Adrian Lenker, and Kate LeBon, and Fever Ray. Those have been my kind of go-to.
Yeah.
And I guess they're quite different artists in a way. I guess what links them for me is a kind of intensity that they have that's connected to, I don't know how to say it without being esoteric, but there's enormous integrity in the music that is connected to, as if they have a very open channel of communication between their music and their life force or something. It's really in there, their music is so alive and so full of things. And their style is all quite different, but they explore things differently. But yeah, there's something, I mean, they're all just very, very good. But there's something very specific. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, they're all artists that are very real.
Yeah,
say.
but again, it's what we say. It's a funny thing to say in a way, because it's like, what does that mean in a way? But yes, I agree with you. Obviously, I don't know any of their life stories, so it's hard to know if that's true. But that's a feeling, for whatever reason, that one gets. They're sharing with you very generously and very sincerely, even when. And I think someone like Aldous Harding does it in such a clear way, where she's changing her voice a lot, and she's very clearly playful, but there's something extremely raw and honest, real in there. I don't know how she does it.
I think you can't kind of imitate that. That's as listeners, I think we pick up on that.
Yeah.
I think it's the same as anybody on social media or TV or anything else. I suppose part of it is you hear the confusion.
Yeah, maybe.
And that's actually, I mean, maybe that's something I look for in an artist as well.
Generosity, I guess. It's that they look into that. They don't package it too soon or something. They don't look from the outside too soon.
Yeah. It's not, this is, you can hear the searching, you can hear the confusion, you can hear that the questions. Yeah. Because that's it. I mean, this is why I do this, because I believe questions and dialogue teach us a lot.
For sure.
But I think some musicians do that as well. They're constantly asking the questions and inviting the listener to be part of that conversation. And I think if you're that kind of musician, then you kind of attract other people that want to be part of that conversation and want to, and not necessarily looking for the answers in a song as well. Right. I mean, I think we kind of grown up on a generation of sort of media which has gone like, what's your favorite song about love, or what's your, it's kind of like, well, how can you put how can you create a song about love that explains all the many assets, all the many aspects of love in a single song? You can't. You can only understand that by listening to a whole load of different things and going, well, this is, that time when this happened, that meant something, and that really resonated. So it's, I think it's people that are I'm going to stick with the word real. And I certainly, there's other artists when I was listening to your music that kind of sprung to mind. Some of the intensity in your voice kind of reminded me of Ida Maria, who's an Irish artist, but she got there's a real kind of want in her voice to know. And yet, I also think that, people could probably find elements of people like Zola Jesus or Emeka and whatever in what you're doing as well, that wanting to find a way of making the voice really sit here.
For sure.
Which is great. So when does the album come out?
I guess in almost a month from now. What is the date today?
It's the 9th of March.
Less than a month. On the 7th of April it comes out.
Yeah, this year's just going.
I know, truly.
It's just unbelievable. So what's your hope for this album? What are you? How are you hoping that people will listen to it?
I think I don't think like that. Maybe because I've somehow actually released a lot of records now, and I think are you
all onto the next thing as soon as this is out?
usually, especially the last little while, because I've been making a lot, but this time I really want to try I guess yes. I guess what I'm just thinking now, in answer to your question, yes. So I'm not really, there's nothing that I can do to control. I mean, obviously you can, in terms of setting up the tour and whatever, you can do that kind of thing, but there's nothing, I can't change the nature of how the album is done, and it's like, through force of control, I can't change how it's shaped or how it's read or how it's, so I have no idea. I do feel, what I like about, what I'm excited about with this album is that the one that's coming out is that I don't know exactly what it is. I did it quite quickly. I mean, very intentionally and presently, but it's new for me, and so I don't know how to read it, and I'm very curious to know how other people do, but not in a kind of a light way somehow. I think that it's accurately represented in the sense of it is what I want it to be, but I don't know what that is. But I think when I feel concerned about how an album's going to be received, I guess it's connected to me feeling that I haven't translated something accurately, that I had an idea or a feeling and it's not quite as it was. Whereas this album was so I shaped it really. It was really being shaped in the process along the way. And so I wasn't trying to get to the idea of something. I was creating the idea as I was going. So it can't really be wrong or something. I don't know how that sounds, if that makes sense, but
no, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I had a lot of fun making it, and I think there's something honest and real in it, and also quite playful, which is a relief, like a bit performative. Like there's something slightly less. Although it's funny because I feel like there's something quite strong on this record, and when I've mentioned it to a few people who have heard it, they're kind of going like, "Oh, I think this is your most vulnerable album to date. Like you say some pretty intense things in there," and then I think like, "Ah, that's actually true," but somehow because of the playfulness of it, I feel in control of that or something. Yeah. I don't feel like I'm unwantingly sharing or something. Or I don't know. It feels like quite extreme in a way that feels, I don't know. It's hard to explain.
It's that liberating thing again, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. I can see you having a lot of fun with this album. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I hope people kind of appreciate that. I think that's a great place to be.
Yeah.
With your art and your music as well, where there's a real depth there, but at the same time,
yeah,
you feel kind of protected by.
Well, I think some of it's quite funny. Like I think it's quite humorous, but I have a very strange sense of humor, so it's possible. It's possible that some people really don't get that, and maybe they're like, "Oh God, is this girl okay?" I think some of it is a bit.
She is. Don't worry.
Even in building, like with the "Hey girl, let's go" part thing, it's like probably a bit unnerving, and it's supposed to be, but it's also supposed to be a bit subversive. It's not. Yeah, and I guess I really like. I mean, I don't know. There's an artist called Dari Previn, who there's a line of hers that I reference in Stereoscope, but she. I really like her, and she writes in this kind of. I think her music is quite humorous, but it's completely devastating. It's like it's kind of there's a bit of self-deprecating humor, but also just some like, oh, everything's casual, and then it like stabs you with a knife. I really like that. I hope people get that in it, but if they don't, they don't. It's also fine.
I think it's a very safe place to be.
Yeah.
Time has shown us, time and time again, that some of the most saccharine, sweet, lyrics, and melody, etc., has been actually the front of, or sat in front of people who are breaking apart.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't think for 1 minute that it's a bad place to be. You know, ultimately you come at it with, if you're coming at it with a good place and that playfulness, I think a lot of people will then get that, and I think a lot of people will kind of rejoice in that.
I mean, I just hope people listen to it. That's what I hope. That's
Yeah, well, that's the aim of doing things like this. So I hope so too, because it's you know, from what I've heard so far, it's a fantastic piece of work. So thank you for joining me and having this chat today.
It's a pleasure. It was lovely to speak. Thank you.
Yeah. Just so people know, if they want to hear the album when it comes out, where's the best place for people to register interest so that they find out?
I mean, I have a website, which is lucykruger.com, but then I'm unfortunately on all the social things and all the streaming sites, so kind of wherever.
Yeah. Make sure you follow Lucy. Get in touch, check out the website, and stay in touch. And when the album comes out, I'm sure a lot of people out there will really enjoy it.
Thank you. I hope you're right.
Lucy, it's been a pleasure talking to you for My Music Today. If you've enjoyed this conversation out there, thank you. Do share it with friends, because this is the best way for music to get out there. Keep the story going. Share it with someone else that you know. Subscribe, and all of those wonderful things will help us to keep doing this in order to help musicians tell their story. Lucy, thanks for joining me today.
Sure.
Bye for now.